Cthulhu balaclava for later and all. That's my Halloween costume.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to Innsmouth at Halloween. Yes, we're coming to you live. I'm in the back room of the Esoteric Order of Dagon. Tim is in his bookshop there. And
Indeed.
As you can see, we've got our special guest, Jeff Goad, has joined us as well. I'm one of your guides, Rob Poyton, of course.
I'm the other one, Tim Mendes. Yeah, and tonight we'll be having a look at, last time we did a Halloween special, it was more a sort of on the history of Halloween and old traditions and all that kind of business. But tonight we thought we'd do something a little bit different. We thought we'd get some guests on and we just ask them a bit of questions about just like their Halloween experiences, their kind of favorite stuff, all that kind of business. We should have a couple more guests coming in, but I don't know whether internet is an issue. I know I had issues earlier with it. Virgin Media have been stunningly poor at the moment. But apart from that, we're just going to muddle through. So yeah, our first guest and only guest at the moment, Jeff, how are you doing, sir?
Doing good. I was just in West Virginia this morning, and I'm now back in Cleveland, Ohio. So I've been home for, at this point, less than half an hour.
Wow.
Blimey.
But I'm good. I was dressed up from The Wizard of Oz last night, and I was on a punk show for a band called the Jasons, which is a bunch of people dressed up in Jason masks with music, and that was fun.
Excellent.
Nice.
How far? What sort of journey is that? What sort of distance is that you covered?
3.5 hours.
Oh wow, that's a fair.
Yeah. So not near, not far.
Yeah. I was a bit better. I played a gig down in London this afternoon, and similar. Got back into Innsmouth not that long ago. So. But
I DJ'd last night till stupid o'clock in the morning. So I've been holding my eyes open like that all day.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, would you like just to introduce yourself to the audience a little bit? Tell us, because obviously you do the Appendix N podcast and all that kind of business. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jeff Goad. I am the host of the Appendix N Book Club, the co-host. Hoy and I co-host the show together. And for those of you who don't know what the Appendix N is, in the back of the 1979 Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide, there's appendices, and one of them is the list of all the books you should read for your gaming inspiration, for your advanced Dungeons and Dragons gaming. So Hoy and I started a podcast. We're going through and we're reading those books and discussing them one by one with a bunch of special guests. And we've been doing this for a few years now. I think we're on our 5th or 6th year at this point. So we've gotten through a bunch of stuff. It's expanded the scope of it to just kind of be anything that inspires your gaming. And that's the show that I'm currently on. Formerly, I was also on Spellburn, which is a podcast about Dungeon Crawl classics. And that's basically the reason anybody here might know me or need to know me.
Yeah, because of course you've guested on our Strange Shadows, our sister podcast. Talking about which story was it? End of the story, wasn't it?
End of the story, wasn't it? Yeah.
That sinister monk and his draw full of porn. Yeah.
Is there any? Just while we're on the subject of role-playing games, I was just wondering: are there any sort of Halloween specific scenarios you can think of for D&D or Call of Cthulhu or anything else that springs to mind?
Yeah, Dungeon Crawl Classics has a whole line of Halloween modules, and they're really fun. I really like. Is it they drink Brandolin Red? They something Brandolin Red. I forgot what the verb is. But that one's really fun. Also for like old school D&D fans, I'm a really big fan of Judges Guild products. And the original Judges Guild that was around in the 1970s that was publishing all of these third-party materials for D&D published this really fantastic gonzo fun house, haunted house called Teagle Manor. Manor is a blast. It's one of my favorites. Yeah. And one of my favorite things to do at gaming conventions in the U.S. is I will run Teagle Manor as a zero funnel for Dungeon Crawl Classics, but you're all playing 80s movie stereotypes. So I'm making very much an 80s movie, like horror movie, very much a la Spookies. I don't know if anybody here has seen the really dreadful 80s horror film Spookies, but I'm very much going for that vibe.
Rings a bell, yeah. I've seen a lot of really bad 80s horror movies, so they're all kind of blur into one.
Yeah, Spookies is wonderfully terrible. Highly recommend.
So is that characters like you got the sort of high school jock and that kind of thing, is it? And
the way we do the game, in Spookies itself, it's a bunch of cars a bunch of cars are driving up to this big spooky mansion, and I guess they're having a party there, but I don't know why any of these people know each other. You've got the punk rock guys, and you've got the coke-addled businessmen, and just the whole thing is just like, I don't know why these people are hanging out together, but we just accept that they are and move forward with the plot. And I just feel like that's so perfect for a convention game.
Oh yeah, just get all these random people who wouldn't normally talk to each other and just stick them in a room. So that's great, a great concept. Yeah. That does ring a bell, actually. Spookies. I'm gonna have to look it up. I'm sure I've seen it at some point. Yeah.
It's real bad. And if you do decide to watch it, one thing I will tell you that will make the experience more interesting is actually when they made the film, they only got like 45 minutes of it made. So then it was handed to somebody else, and then that other person then shot a bunch of other stuff with completely different cast to edit into it to bulk it up to 90 minutes. So if there's any moments in the movie where you're like, are these people even in the same room? Like, how do these plots connect? They weren't, and they don't connect. Don't worry about trying to make it work. It is what it is in a beautiful way.
Just go with the flow, baby.
Yeah. So it's like some weird version of a movie version of a round robin sort of thing.
Yes.
Well, didn't that happen with that? Like, it was a similar thing with Plan 9 from Outer Space, wasn't it? Because like Bela Lugosi died and half the cast left, so he ended up finishing half the movie with some bloke walking around like that with a cape over his face.
And I think a lot of those low budget films, they used to kind of make them back to back, didn't they? Just to use the set. Didn't Corman used to shoot films in like 8 days or something like that?
Yeah. It was something ridiculous like that. Yeah.
Usually the same cast as well.
Yeah, but Fulcian as well, because I mean, a lot of his films, it's all the same guys, and they were all filmed at the same time. So it was like, we'll do a few shots from Zombie Flesh Eaters, then we'll do a few shots from someone else, and yeah, it was like the Italian productions, the Gallo, or however you pronounce it, productions. That was all done very similar, wasn't it? Of that kind of shoestring. Here's a bunch of people. We've got a week. Let's try and make as many films as we can in a week.
Well, and in some ways, we're still kind of doing some of that stuff. Like in the past year, Ty West came out with these 2 phenomenal horror films. One is called X, and the other is called Pearl. And X takes place in the 1970s, and it's basically a pornographer and his group of porn stars come to rent out this village, this farmhouse to shoot porno, but things go real bad, and it's amazing. It's so wonderful. It takes place in the 70s, but then as soon as they finished making the film, they immediately started making Pearl in the same location. And Pearl is the prequel that takes place in the 1910s, 60 years beforehand, but they're still using the same set, and they just kind of fixed it all up.
Nice.
And it's got some of the same people involved too. So you've got the same crew, the same set, some of the same actors, and you just film it back to back. I'm sure it saves a ton of money on a lot of production issues.
Yeah, well, I imagine logistics. I imagine logistics is one of the big costs. Like, you know, shipping all the sets and costumes and God knows what out to locations. I imagine that's where a lot of the budget actually goes for these things. So,
but yeah, I'm a big horror fan. My partner and I do 31 Days of Horror every October, and this is our first year of doing it.
Right. So you're up to your last movie tomorrow, then, I guess. What are some of the ones you've been watching? And what while we're on movies, what would your sort of favorite Halloween watches be?
Well, my favorite horror films are Rosemary's Baby and Daughters of Darkness. Rosemary's Baby is more common. Daughters of Darkness is less known. Daughters of Darkness is a 1971 lesbian vampire film. It's a co-production between the US, Germany, France, and Canada. And each of the producers got to provide one of the four main actors. And the US provided an actor from Dark Shadows, which was like a really popular soap opera at the time that I'm so obsessed with. France brought along Delphine Seyrig, who's a great intellectual French actress who starred in like The Last Year at Marienbad and The Discreet Charm of Bourgeoisie and Donkey Skin, and this really just respected, incredible actress. And Germany and Canada brought porn stars. And
I bet the German
we can imagine, can't we?
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of art cinema, I'm a big fan of sexploitation, and I'm a big fan of horror. And this movie is just the beautiful Venn diagram overlap of all three of those. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
Nice.
Daughters of Darkness.
Ooh, how about you, Tim? What do you think for a good?
And I've got an original Italian poster of it hanging right here.
Oh,
La
brilliant.
Bestali di Satana. Oh, nice.
That's brilliant. Yeah, well, I think for me, one of my favourite Halloween films, this is going to come as no surprise to you, Rob. It's got to be Carry On Screaming.
Harriet, I'm screaming?
Carry on screaming.
Oh, Carry On Screaming.
Yeah, I love it. It's just perfect. It's got that, because I mean, I'm a huge fan of the old Hammer horror, because that would be my other more sensible answer would be something like, you know, the old Christopher Lee Dracula, or something like that, something along those kind of lines. One of the old Hammer movies, even maybe like Wicker Man, even, or you know, something along them lines. The Devil Rides Out, anything like that. But Carry On Screaming, it's just got that the one. It's basically taken the campness of the Hammer films and accentuated it into this wonderful creation. And you know, we covered it last year, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We did an episode on it, because it's kind of obviously it's got that Carry On tone to it, but like you say, it does blend in that that they got the palette right, didn't they? That sort of very vivid, the purples and the reds and everything else.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's like Fenella Fielding's outfit. It's sumptuous. Like the decor of the room, it's sumptuous, and she's voluptuous, and there's all this umptuousness of it, you know. And it's just got some of the funniest lines in the history of cinema, in my opinion. And so, it's got one of your favourite bits in there, hasn't it?
That bit where they go, we're looking for the suspects. Whereabouts? Hereabouts, or thereabouts, layabouts. Yeah, it's just that beautiful music hall kind of delivery, isn't it? It blends in as well. Yeah. Well, that'd certainly be on my list. But I think I'll go for something quite obvious, and there's a reason for this, and that'd be Nightmare Before Christmas, because that doubles as a Halloween film and a Christmas movie, so you can watch it twice. And there's, I think I'll see if I can find the link for it. There's a very interesting documentary about it on YouTube about the making of it, and they had a lot of issues in the making. I think it took quite some time to get it all together, to get it all working. And you sort of think someone like Tim Burton, even at that stage, he was fairly well known, I would have thought. Oh, yeah. I guess, was that pre-Batman? Maybe it was pre-Batman.
No, this is after Batman.
It was after Batman, right?
It's also after Edward Scissorhands and Beetlejuice. And Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He'd had a lot of big successes at this point in his career.
And you think the studios would have been sort of handing him money, you know, but he had a real struggle to get it made. Maybe it was because it was an animation, and I think they said it was seen as like a kids movie. You know?
I guess that was
if it's animation, it must be a kids movie. I think.
Yeah,
but
I guess at that time it would have been that. It would have been, if you're not Disney in that sort of era, you know, and you're making animation, you're not going to get any money because they're just going to go, well, nobody's going to watch it. So. Yeah.
Well, I can't think of any other mainstream sort of adult animation. I mean, you get things like Bakshi, sort of Fritz the Cat and that kind of stuff, but that wasn't really so sort of mainstream stuff. And that had some problematic.
That was problematic, to say the least. Yeah.
But I think other than that, if I had to go for a scary one, I'd say The Woman in Black, but not the film with Harry Potter in it. The ITV adaptation from 82, I think 81, 82.
No,
around that time.
was
it a bit later than that?
It was a bit later than that. It was a bit like I didn't. I've actually got it in there. I bought it recently. I watched it recently. It's so good.
The DVD was released a couple of months back, I think, or a few months back, wasn't it? And
it's Nigel Neal, isn't it?
Nigel Neal, yeah. And they hit every button on that absolutely right. I think it was as scary as watching the stage play, which was very scary.
Amazing. I love the stage play. Yeah.
Have you had that over there, Jeff? The stage play, The Woman in Black, has that been across to the States?
It has been. I've not seen it. I know that. So I live in Cleveland, and it was at the Cleveland Playhouse the year before I moved here. So I've not seen the stage play, but I've heard great things about it.
Yeah.
I have a question about Carry On Screaming, though. So as the stand-in for your American audience here, I've never seen. I know what the Carry On movies are, but I've never seen a Carry On movie. Is Carry On Screaming kind of in the vein of the what are the horror parody series that I'm thinking of out here that parodied Scream and
Scary Movie, things like that.
Scary Movie. Is this in the vein of Scary Movie but trying to do a Hammer horror style, or is the tone very different?
The tones, I would say the tone is very different because these were done they were filmed at the same time as a lot of the Hammer stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, and so they use a lot of the sets, and even some of the actors and actresses cross over because some of the comedy actors were in Hammer and things like that. And it's just a very different style of humor. Whereas the Scary Movie, it was a lot more absurd. It was a lot more, the Willy through the glory hole through the ear thing, that bit and all that. Yeah, whereas
it's kind of in the tone like the Fearless Vampire Killers.
More along them lines.
More along that, yeah. It's played very straight. It's all played very straight. A little more perhaps like a Love at First Bite or something like that, maybe.
Okay.
That kind of feel, perhaps.
But very
so more horror comedy than just comedy that's lampooning horror.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not really a lampoon as such, is it? In that sense, no. It kind of not takes itself seriously, but if you looked at it and you didn't know anything about it, you might think it was a Hammer horror film. It's that kind of thing until you get there.
Kenneth, that's it. I mean, it's very, 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 very British, the comedy. It's all double entendre. It's all smutty innuendos and or like, woo. It's all that kind of thing. Yeah. Which, funnily enough, actually, we Rob and I were involved in we did an anthology basically taking the Carry On films and mixing it with the Cthulhu mythos. So we all wrote basically a Carry On Cthulhu mythos story, and we called it the Nookie-nomicon, which kind of says all you need to know.
Well, speaking of Cthulhu, I'm curious what you guys think of horror films that have been made from mythos titles. I'm personally a huge fan of the Stuart Gordon movies. I love Reanimator. I love From Beyond. I love Dagon. And I really loved the Master of Horror episode he did on Dreams in the Witch House. I thought that one was really fantastic. And I recognize that From Beyond, Reanimator, and Dagon are not super close adaptations, but Dreams in the Witch House is much, much closer to the source material. But I love those. But I'm curious what you guys think of Lovecraftian horror film in general.
Well, we were talking about that, funny enough, just earlier, because obviously we've got the Guillermo del Toro adaptations out at the moment, and maybe we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I thought the Dreams in the Witch House in particular was a very good adaptation, and you accept that they have to change certain things because of the the different medium. But I think Reanimator and From Beyond, although they were rather glutinous and darkly humorous, I suppose, But I think that dark humor catches a lot of Lovecraft anyway, because we say over again, he had far more of a sense of humor than he's given credit for, I think. And
oh, absolutely.
A lot of his stuff is almost tongue in cheek, I think, sometimes, particularly Reanimator.
Yeah, well, Reanimator was specifically, it was partially a comedy. I mean, he said that he wanted to have some fun with it. So, and it's kind of quite farcical at some of the scenes in it. So I think Stuart Gordon did a great job of taking that and sort of running with it, you know, and I think it catches the sort of the feel of it really well. And I totally agree with Dreams of the Witch House. I think that's massively underrated. Yeah. I thought it was really good. And it was like I was just saying to Rob earlier, as you mentioned, that a lot of it was pretty much one for one with the story.
Mm-hmm.
The only real major difference was the time period it was set in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was brought up to modern times, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And again, you might think in some ways that's a budget thing, perhaps, you know. They don't have to bother getting costumes in and all that stuff, I guess. And that doesn't really affect the story, does it, in any way, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either.
Have you seen the Del Toro adaptations yet? I've seen a couple.
Cabinet of Curiosities?
Yeah.
I've not started that yet, no. I'm planning on starting that soon. But with my 31 Days of Horror, my viewing schedule has been pretty packed.
I've seen the first three. The second one was The Graveyard Rats, Henry Kuttner, which we covered a little while back as well. And I thought that was done well. They did make changes to it, but the changes kind of fitted the story. I've not seen Pickman's Model or Dreams in the Witch House yet, and I've not read good things about them.
No, I haven't.
I didn't realize that these were literary adaptations. I just thought it was Guillermo del Toro doing anthology horror. I didn't know that he was doing that. That makes me even more excited for that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tim.
Oh, sorry. I'm just saying that. And I mean. What happened there? Is that one of the Hounds of Hell?
No, it's the deep ones are banging on the door again. So.
Oh, yeah. One of them left their gold tiara lying around.
Well,
again.
I think they're expecting to come in for their bingo tonight. That it's actually been postponed until tomorrow. You know what the old folk are like with their bingo.
Yeah. No, I think in terms of Lovecraftian adaptations, I mean, I go into watching it because there's been actually a lot more than most people realize. There's been a hell of a lot over the years. A lot of them are incredibly low budget, and so a lot of them are student movies and things like that. But if you go into them expecting that they're going to have to make changes, they're going to have to do things differently, you can often find little like hidden gems. It was like one I watched recently was called, it wasn't actually based on a Lovecraft story, it was based on somebody else's Lovecraftian story, a guy called Paul Kane. It was called Sacrifice, and it actually had Barbara Crampton from the Stuart Gordon movies in it.
I love her.
And it was set in Norway or somewhere, and it was basically like Shadow over Innsmouth but in Scandinavia, and they got the feel of it spot on. And the whole tone of it, I thought, was really good. Obviously, they had absolutely zero budget. but if you accept that, I mean, you know, there has been some good ones, but there has also been some phenomenally bad ones.
Yeah. Did you enjoy The Color Out of Space with Nicolas Cage?
I did. I've got to say, though, that for me, it was... what's his name now? Chong.
Tommy Chong.
Tommy Chong. Tommy Chong stole that. He was absolutely phenomenal in that. I mean, Nicolas Cage, I'm kind of... He kind of annoys me a lot. but
what about in the remake of The Wicker Man, where he's just running around punching out old ladies? That was amazing.
I hated that film.
I find it
so bad, but it's hilarious.
It is hilarious.
Sometimes these things, when somebody really just like stampedes an IP that I love, like the Tim Burton Dark Shadows, I loathe it. It makes me so angry. I can't. Wow. I've watched it once. I don't think I'll ever watch it again. But for some reason, the remake of The Wicker Man was just so ludicrous and so completely missed the mark for me that like I was smiling ear to ear and I couldn't stop laughing throughout the whole fiasco. Especially when he's just like punching out old ladies. I'm like, what is happening in this movie?
I guess there was modes. Yeah.
I say it brought in that nice idea with the bees and the hive mind kind of thing was an interesting angle. But other than that, I can't really remember anything about it, or perhaps I've just blocked it out.
Yeah, I just remember giving myself eye strain from all the rolling they were doing while I was watching it. You know?
Do you think there's a place for remakes when you've got such a classic film as that? I mean, it's like, is anyone ever going to remake Apocalypse Now or something? You know, it's like, why would you even try and do that? I just wonder.
You have a really interesting new take on it that you want to explore. I think it's all right. Like I thought the remake of Wrong Turn that came out recently was a really interesting kind of retelling of that story with like an interesting twist on it. So I think it can be done in an interesting way. And like John Carpenter's The Thing is a masterpiece. And that's a remake of 1957, I believe, film, The Thing from Outer Space. Sometimes people take something like this and really just turn it into something else fantastic, but usually they don't. Usually it's trash.
So I was a big fan of the 80s remake of The Blob. I know a lot. I know that again. That's one of the movies that's so awful. It's brilliant because it was just, it was so 80s, wasn't it? It was like everything was neon. It's just, I've just got this big nostalgia kick every time I watch it. It's the, you know, but I think the remake thing is getting really kind of silly at the minute. More so in video games at the moment. In the horror video games, it's like recently announced. They've recently announced that somebody's remaking Silent Hill 2, which in my opinion is one of the best games ever made. And basically everybody said the same thing. Yeah, that one doesn't need the remake. The first one, which was from the PS1 era, that needs a remake. Whereas you can play that one, you can play Silent Hill 2 today and it's still perfectly fine. And the one that took it to ludicrous heights recently was Naughty Dog remade The Last of Us, which was their game, but that only came out like the last console generation. So it's only been out. Wow. It's only been out like 7 years. It's just like, why? What is the point? You know.
And it's a little like that Psycho remake, which it was like a frame for frame copy. As far as I didn't actually watch it, but from what I gather, it was. It was a replica, awful. Pretty much. Yeah, it seems again, like Jeff said, if you're going to remake something from a different angle or perspective, maybe. But and is someone lined up to do Nosferatu as well? Did I hear somewhere recently? So had obviously the original. Then there was the Klaus Kinski, Herzog version, which was that was all right actually. Yeah.
I actually and. This might be a controversial opinion. I prefer it to the original.
Right. Well, I can kind of see that in a way because a silent movie from that time is very much of its time, and you have to sort of perhaps suspend your disbelief a little bit more. I don't know. Having said that, I don't think anyone has ever captured the vampire like Max Schreck. That is such a masterful look and performance. Even Christopher Lee and all those guys, nothing comes close to that. I don't think.
What was the film? I can't remember the name of it, but it was about Max Schreck actually being a vampire.
Oh, Shadow of the Vampire.
That was brilliant.
Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, William Dafoe and Eddie Izzard was in it.
Yeah, that was really good. I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
So if we move away from film then, how about Halloween stories? Are there any sort of specific Halloween stories, either themed or are there stories perhaps you read every Halloween? I don't particularly have anything in mind, I have to say. There's probably M.R. James is the one I'd reread the most, I guess. Look at that, beautiful. Is that
just your familiar? Just popped in from Ulthar. Well, funnily enough, there we go.
Okay.
Nice. Is that a boy or a girl, Jeff? Is that...
This is a boy. His name is Hugh. and his sister Shanna, also all black, and she's over there, and their brother and sister from the same litter. And Shanna are named after Dungeon Call Classics character.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But as for Halloween literature, I don't think that I have any stories that are necessarily Halloween themed that I enjoy. But yeah, there's a lot of great horror short stories out there. I really enjoy the Barker books of Volume 1 and the was it Blood Blues is one that I really enjoy. But of course, like, you know, Lovecraft, Clark Evans Smith, and and Bierce and all those folks. There's lots of great material to pull from. But Blues is the one that I'm kind of probably put at the top of my list.
Nice. Yeah, I think I do have one. It's a bit of a tradition for me. Every year, I have to dig it out. It's Roger Zelazny's A Night in the Lonesome October. It's about it's a novella length thing, but it's absolutely bonkers, and it's set around a ritual around Halloween, and each chapter is a day, going up to the end of the month, so you can like read a chapter a day throughout the month. But
it's a Halloween advent calendar.
Yeah, pretty much. But
I have one of those.
Nice. But funnily enough, that it's actually got cats from Ulfar in it as well. The main character, it's told from the perspective of a dog called Snuff, who is the familiar of Jack the Ripper. And it's set in 1888 around in the Autumn of Terror. And the murders are part of this ritual, and there's various other wizards and their familiars, and they're trying to summon the old ones or stop the summoning of the old ones. And Snuff's friend is a cat who's actually an Ulfar cat. So he ends up going into the Dreamlands at one point, and it's just absolutely bonkers. And I don't know if you've read any of Zelazny's stuff. It's very funny. He's got a very wry sense of humor to it. And I just adore it. It's just one of those things that I never get bored of. It's just so much fun.
They're actually covering that at the moment on the HP Podcraft.
Are they really?
I think it's called Strange Studies now. Yeah, I think it's a 3 or 4 parter. So yeah, I'll send you the link over. I'll put the link in as well for that.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because I'd never read it, but just listening to them talking about it, so yeah, I need to get hold of a copy.
Yeah, because I did suggest we were going to do it this time, but there was a lot of other stuff going on, and we didn't have time to do it, and so I've said next year. We'll do it next year.
Yeah. And I don't know, on this side of the pond, I always have the impression that Halloween is way bigger in the States than here. Though I think that is changing a bit. I think Halloween is growing here as a holiday. Is that a wrong impression, or is it like as big as Christmas over there, do you think?
I do. I think Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas are the 3 big holidays in the U.S. So I think the holiday season really run from October through the beginning of January. I guess also New Year's Eve would be included as well. But I think those are really the big holidays in the U.S. Because I mean, what do we have here? Like 4th of July, like sure, there's some fireworks. Memorial Day, like you've got the day from work, but like nobody's really doing much with that usually. So yeah, those are really big holidays out here.
Yeah.
We're kind of just a bit crap on anything like that, really, aren't we? It's even like Christmas, like you guys really go to town with all the decorations and all that. We just get a bit of tinsel
and those balloons.
In my neighborhood, there's Halloween decorations everywhere. I just go in a few blocks down. There's this like one house that has these like 2 giant 8-foot tall skeletons in their front yard.
Wow. That's awesome.
Stuff like hanging out over this like graveyard they put in their front yard. It's cool.
Nice.
I
think it is growing here, but we're certainly not at that. I mean, apart from our house.
Yeah, and mine as well.
We've got pumpkins out the front and also ghost in the tree and all sorts of stuff. But I think Halloween is growing, and I think when I was a kid, maybe the same for you, Tim. It was Guy Fawkes Night was the big thing at this time of year. bonfire night. And I think Halloween has kind of taken over from that now.
Yeah, when was the last time you saw a bunch of kids with a wheelbarrow doing the penny for the guy thing? Because we were doing that as well. I was a kid.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it for years.
That was the thing, Jeff. It like commemorated, Guy Fawkes tried to blow up Parliament in 17th century, I guess it was.
Yeah.
So there used to be Guy Fawkes Night, where an effigy of Guy Fawkes, the guy, would be placed on top of the bonfire and burnt, and there'd be fireworks and all that kind of stuff. So we still have the fireworks thing on the 5th of November, but Halloween seems bigger now than that here. And all the supermarkets are carrying Halloween ranges of stuff.
That's something I do like. That's something I approve of, because I'm one of them people, because, I mean, look at me. I'm one of those dodgy old goths that goes to shops around this time of year, and that's where their entire house is decorated with. It's like I buy Halloween decorations, they go up at Halloween and then they never come down again. So I've got decorations that have been up for like about a decade now.
Part of the decor.
Yeah, exactly. This is it,
One media that I'm not sure if you were planning on getting to or not, but I think is really important to my experience of Halloween television.
Yeah.
Like Halloween television was always really important to me. Like as a kid, we'd always have It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown on TV would always be on the television. Also, the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes were really part of my childhood.
Some of them were hilarious.
Good.
The Raven one.
Growing up, like the family, we watched Roseanne all the time, and Roseanne had a Halloween episode every season. Like went all out on the show, and I remember like loving those episodes as a kid. Like even as I grew up, like I love the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode, Fear Itself, that takes place on Halloween. There's just a lot of good like Halloween television out there.
Yeah, that's something that we'd never really had, did we? We had with the Christmas specials and everything.
Yeah,
and it was usually like sitcoms, and then you had Morecambe and Wise and all that. But we never really had the Halloween specials.
You guys go really the Christmas specials. I love that. Like see, most shows like have like its own little Christmas special, which I think is great.
Yeah, I can't think that any of the sitcoms had. Quite often, I think on Dad's Army, there'd be like a ghosty one or something. There's like a haunted house type. You'd get that kind of thing, but I can't think of anything specifically Halloween. The only thing we did have on TV at Halloween that has passed into legend was it called Ghost Watch?
Oh yes, Ghost Watch.
I don't know if you know about this, Jeff, but it was set up as it's based on a famous poltergeist story called the Enfield Poltergeist. And
the Conjuring 2 was based on the same thing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was a set of very well-known British presenters, people like Michael Parkinson and other people doing. So he's in the studio and there's this live broadcast from this supposedly haunted house. And it all starts off quite jokey and all this kind. There's a teenage girl involved, and it got progressively darker as it went through. And if you came into this late like I did, or even people from the start, you thought it was real. It was presented as a live television show, a bit like the War of the Worlds thing, and it was that kind of thing. And at the end of it, all hell breaks loose and the poltergeist appears and the studio goes dark and it's like, I mean, really scary stuff.
Didn't Parky get something?
Yeah.
Didn't Parky get possessed?
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, it was really well done. And
Craig Charles was in it as well, wasn't he? From Red Dwarf.
Halloween, and I think it got the most complaints that any BBC program has ever got. It terrified people.
Well, and it's not a Halloween special, but I feel like the League of Gentlemen Christmas special is very appropriate for Halloween.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, Tim, you had mentioned goth. So I'm curious, do you guys have like Halloween music that's really important to you?
Oh yeah, I think the big one, because I mean, last night I DJ'd last night, and I think the big one you have to end on. There's a couple of things you have to play at Halloween. You've got to play some version of the Monster Mash at some point, right? You've got to. At least one. Exactly.
Yeah.
But as a goth DJ, you have to end. I think it's written in some law somewhere, some obscure law. Bela Lugosi's Dead by Bauhaus.
There we go. My money was on that too.
Now, are you doing the full 9-minute version?
Oh yeah, it was great. It's great because you just play out on it. just leave it running while I'm packing up. It's great. There's certain things you've got to do, and then you can throw in some other classics here and there. But the thing is, it's so easy for me because most of what I play could be classed as Halloween music. It's all about bloody vampires and it's all about vampires and werewolves and shit. Anyway, so
I don't know if this is currently on your radar, but last year Elvira put out a song called "Two Big Pumpkins," which is fantastic.
Yes,
and I would encourage you to, if you haven't listened to it, it's a great song. I encourage you to make that into part of your Halloween routine because that song's fantastic.
Yeah, gonna do
and
that.
Have you heard with Monster Mash? Have you heard the album? Because he did a whole album.
Yes.
Bobby Boris Pickett,
No,
the Transylvania Twist. Me and
Transylvania
My Money.
Twist,
it's a great album. It's all along the same lines, but it's really good. Yeah. I'm going to make a note of that Elvira one, Two Big Pumpkins.
Well, funnily enough, one of the CDs I had in my bag last night was the old Elvira released compilation CDs, and it was like Elvira's hits, or I can't remember, Elvira's big hits or some pun, and it was all just stuff like the Monster Mash, and it was all
cool,
all these old songs from the 50s and all the rest of it. So that's a great one to have on hand. It's just right on track 3. I don't know which one it is, but it'll be fine, Yeah.
So I'm also curious to know what you guys your best Halloween experiences as well. I mean, I suppose it could be good or it could be scary, or just what was your best Halloween moment, do you think?
I've got a couple. I mean, probably my best in terms of quality would be the first time I went to Whitby Goth Weekend and did the whole Abbey tour at midnight after drinking far too much and watching Fields of the Nephilim sort of staggering around the Abbey at night. That was great. But in terms of scariest, I grew up just outside of Alderley Edge. Alderley Edge was down the road where the weird Stone of Brisingamen and all that is set, and it's a legendary place that's supposed to Merlin is supposed to used to hang around there and all this kind of stuff. So and it's always been a hotbed. I think it's ley lines and stuff. So you get all the crystal dowsers and all that kind of stuff there, right? So Halloween up there is an absolute free for all. And me and some mates got on our bikes when we were 13, 14 and cycled out there. And there's all these naked nutcases dancing around fires and stuff like this. I was just they were all on magic mushrooms as well, because they're all sprouting around this time of year. So they're all off their nut. It was like you're going to hell. It was brilliant.
Nice to see people keeping up the old ways, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
How about you, Jeff? You've been cavorting naked in the woods?
No cavorting in the woods, but I feel like when I think about really special Halloween memories, they often involve a Ouija board. And I remember being 14 years old, and my friend Josh, this is when I was living in Washington State, and my friend Josh lived on a Native American reservation, the Suquamish Reservation, which is, and his house was basically right across the street from a graveyard where Chief Seattle is buried. And so on Halloween, we sat on Chief Seattle's grave and brought our Ouija board out, and we're talking to the ghosts, and that was super fun. But then also recently, I forget if it was last Halloween or the Halloween before, I think it was the last one though. We had our friend Josh and Anthony's who they go all out for Halloween. I mean, they're first off, they're drag queens, and they're just but they're obsessed with Halloween, and their entire house inside and out just completely transforms. It's amazing.
Nice.
And I was at their party, and somebody busted out the Ouija board. They're chatting with Divine on the Ouija board. I don't know if you guys know who Define is.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the name game.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Love the
So supposedly Divine came and was chatting with us, and she was telling us to eat shit, and that's fun.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I've got the 12-inch single of the name game somewhere. The one from Wax Trax Records. I've got the 12-inch of that somewhere.
I think mine was a gig probably about 10, 12 years ago now. I used to play with a band called the Texas Chainsaw Orchestra, which was a 12-piece kind of burlesque, dark cabaret type band. And we got a Halloween gig at a club called Torture Garden. And the venue was a big old church in Brixton, just opposite the sort of Odeon. It was like one of those, it's set in the middle of the road. So the road splits and there's this huge, big old church. And it was on several floors. So there was a big hall upstairs with a stage where we were set up. And we went on at something like 1 o'clock in the morning. So obviously you get there and set up quite early. So we had hours just wandering around these 3 or 4 levels. There was like an S&M room downstairs. There was all sorts of stuff going on. And to say fancy dress isn't really doing it a service, but everyone was dressed for Halloween. And one of the most amazing outfits was a guy. Do you remember the film Legend with Tom Cruise and Tim Curry as the devil? He had that. I mean, you know, full body paint, the horns and everything. I mean, it just looked magnificent. But
nice.
Everyone there, and that was a really good gig and a really good night. So yeah.
Also, I'm realizing I've completely left out the greatest Halloween of my life. I don't know why it took a second to remember, but I went on a Dark Shadows cruise to Bermuda with cast of Dark Shadows.
Wow.
And a bunch of Dark Shadows fans, and it happened over Halloween. And the night of Halloween, like there was a big costume ball, and I got dressed up as the werewolf from Dark Shadows, and there's like, and I got to dance with Maggie Evans, who was dressed up like her original character from the beginning of the series when she had that little weird blonde wig and was dressed up as the waitress, and I got to dance with her while doing that, and I got to spend some time with Angelique, and that was super fun and cool. So
incredible.
That's brilliant.
Big geek moment for me, but yes.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Because I see that with these specialized cruises now. There is a goth one, right, Tim? And then there's heavy metal ones and all sorts of things. Yeah. I don't know. Should we do a Lovecraft one? Would that be asking for trouble?
No, that'd be asking for trouble.
Sail out into the Pacific. Never to be seen again.
Go and search for Relay. Yeah.
There's a
the
story
search for Relay. There you go. That's the name of the cruise. The search for Relay.
You'll never leave. We've had a question. We've had a question coming from Dawn. Hi, Dawn. Thanks for tuning in and thanks for the question. I'm looking forward to watching the new Paranormal Activity. Have you seen it? Can't quite remember the name. Love really atmospheric horrors. What about you all? What's your favorite type of horror?
Some good questions there. I've not seen the latest Paranormal Activity. I have seen all of the other ones. The first couple I thought were actually really quite good. Yeah. And then there was a not so steady decline, just a dramatic drop off. But I still really enjoy them because it's like what we were talking about before. They've got to the point now. Some of them, like the one with, I can't remember which one it was, but it was a complete tonal shift. And it was set in like a Hispanic neighborhood of LA. I think it was called The Marked Ones. But and it got terrible reviews. But I really enjoyed it just because it was like that again. That kind of horror that's just like, it was a bunch of daft teenagers and. It was, it's more like an interactive experience because you're spending most of the time shouting, "Don't go in there, you absolute penis!" at the screen. It's like, "Oh, you stupid! What are you doing?" No, I enjoy them. On the whole. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the first 2 or 3, and I also thought that they were very fun. I had a really great time with them. I've not seen the most recent one, and I hadn't really thought about what my favorite kind of horror movie is. But, I love horror movies that include Satan, but don't include the church. So I guess that would be things like I love Rosemary's Baby. Hereditary is Payman and not Satan, but I'm still going to go ahead and put Hereditary in that same category.
Right.
But also there's this great, I think it's from 1974 horror film called I Drink Your Blood. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for those watching, the premise of I Drink Your Blood is a bunch of Satan worshiping hippies come into town, and the movie starts off with this like great, like it's a ritual in the woods, and they're naked and like cutting themselves for Satan, and it's great. But they end up wreaking havoc all throughout town, and in the process, some things happen, and this boy gets very upset and wants revenge. So he feeds the Satan worship hippie a bunch of meat pies that he made up with the flesh of a rabid dog. So then all the worshiping hippies become rabid cannibals, and it's as wonderful as it sounds.
I remember it. Yeah,
Highly recommend Your Blood. But in general, when it's like kind of Satan-y, but then we bring in the church, like The Exorcist and things, suddenly it becomes a lot less interesting to me when the church shows up in the movie. So I want Satan, but church.
Have you seen The Devil Rides Out, Jeff?
Oh, yeah.
That being, I mean, there's religious overtones to it, but it's not overtly church, is it? In fact, it's almost like he's using magic to fight the magic, isn't it?
Yes,
in some of that. Yeah.
Well, which figures when from the source material, because he was obviously into his occult leanings, wasn't he, Mr. Wheatley? So,
although having said that, I'm just listening to a podcast on the drive here today about the Book of Enoch, which, just to cut a very long story short, is absolutely bonkers. I mean, layers and layers of angels and the Nephilim, who are 4,000 feet high and impregnating. I mean, it's crazy stuff. And of course, most denominations kind of leave that bit out now. We don't talk about that.
Well, it's like I want to know how angels suddenly became a nice thing, because in the Old Testament, there was terrifying things with hundreds of eyes. They were almost like shock-offs.
Sounds familiar, eh? There you go. Just
exactly.
saying.
Yeah, just saying. Yeah.
Not too loudly, because they might be listening. But
but I feel like The Witch is another great example of something that has like the devil stuff going on, but like without the church.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you've seen The Witch. That's
yeah.
Amazing, fantastic. Black Phillip is incredible.
I've not seen it.
And yes, I would like deliciously.
I think my favourite type, I like my horror tinge with a bit of comedy, or sort of so Fibes and things like Comedy of Terrors.
I love the Abominable Dr. Fibes so much.
Yeah, and just the examples.
It's a fashion icon.
There you go. That and the thing where the guy gets skewered with the unicorn horn. And just that. I think it's a left-hand thread. You know, it's so gallows humor.
And really, all of those like AIP Vincent Price films, they all kind of follow the same formula. Like Madhouse is also fantastic, and
Asylum.
Is Madhouse the Shakespeare themed one, or is that something else?
Oh, that's Theatre of Blood.
Theatre of Blood is also fantastic. Yes.
Lionheart. I mean, on one hand, it's horrible. They feed the guy his own dogs, right? I mean, it's vile, but it's done in such a way that it's also hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's funny, earlier, Jeff, you asked me about Carry On Screaming and the feel of that. Fibes, very similar feel. It is very similar. There is the humor is very similar. It's that again. It's that, you know. But I mean that brass unicorn scene wouldn't have been out of place in Carry On Screaming, would it? It'd have been accompanied by a slide whistle and Kenneth Williams going,
and some sort of comment about screwing, no doubt.
He got screwed. You know. Well, he said he wanted a good screw, you know.
But I don't know that I've seen the Paranormal Activity films. I'm not sure I've seen those.
Yeah, I'd definitely say the first three, because they're interconnected. Like the first one is really good. The second one is a prequel, which I think is even better. And then the third one is sort of set earlier, but explains what's happened in the first two.
Right.
I would definitely recommend them. They're very well done.
I tend to avoid now slasher films And also things like where it's just the jump scare. You can almost sit there with a stopwatch and say, yeah, characters established, the mood is established, oh, jump scare, that kind of thing. Which I thought with The Woman in Black was a little bit disappointing in that remake, because it was too jump scary rather than atmospheric.
Yeah.
I mean, effective in some ways, but not as good as that TV adaptation.
No, well, it's like, for my favorite, it is like that. I mean, I'm a huge, like, for my horror, like the films, I have the two things, because I watch all the cosmic horror I can find, and weird stuff like that. I like my really weird horror. Like, I'm a big fan of the Benson and Moorhead stuff, like the Endless and Resolution and all this. It's sort of mind-bending cosmic horror. It's all very weird, and obviously
and Resolution.
Yeah, the Endless and Resolution, and there was another one. What was it called? I can't remember what it was called, but I've not actually got round to watching that one yet. And they're really good, like proper mind-bending stuff, cool. Really cosmic. But I also really like my traditional ghost story stuff. I love that kind of slow pace, lots of big shots of manor houses and looming shadows, things like The Innocents and
the Changeling. The Changeling was a good one as well. George C. Scott,
and obviously, like you say, The Woman in Black. And I'm a big fan of the original BBC Ghost Stories for Christmas adaptations of M.R. James. That 60s version of Oh Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad.
That's outstanding.
Oh, mate, yeah. And there's hardly any dialogue in it. It's just, it's so moody. Yeah.
Did you see his house?
No.
His house is fantastic. Actually, I believe it takes place in England. I'd have to double check that. But basically, it's about a Sudanese immigrant's not the right refugee. It's a Sudanese refugee who ends up moving into housing for refugees, but the house that this person moves into is a haunted house. And because they're a refugee, they're not really allowed to complain about their housing situation, and they don't really have any options to change it. So
I've seen the trailer. I've seen the trailer. It's on my list. It's on Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah.
I saw the trailer the other day and thought, that looks interesting.
Yeah. If you like ghost stories, his house is fantastic. I highly recommend it.
Right.
Oh, nice. We'll have that. And another, much older favourite is Night of the Demon, which is the M.R. James Casting the Runes adaptation.
Yes.
Which is a little of its time, but still effective, I think. Still effective.
I actually thought you were going for Night of the Demons, the 80s film with Linnea Quigley, which I also adore.
That was fun.
Demons, when you're amongst friends.
There was another M.R. James adaptation. Was it Argento, called The Church? And it was
The Church is Michel Fulci. No. It's Michel Suavi, the guy who did Cemetery. It's Michel Suavi.
Yeah, that's it. And that's an adaptation of it's a loose adaptation. I think it's The Treasure of Abbot Thomas. It's a loose adaptation. It's a loose James adaptation anyway. And I thought it was really fun. So
These movies are great. Have you seen Cemetery Man or Della Morte Della More?
Della Morte Della More.
Yes,
I love that.
Fabulous. Yeah.
That casting. I mean, who thought? Let's get Rupert Everett.
And he
it's one of the
best.
best. One of the best zombie movies ever made, in my opinion. I think it's so much fun. It's just so much fun.
Going back to the sort of comedy side of things, I think it's like Bad Taste as well. Peter Jackson's Bad Taste. That's a top 10 as well. I think that one.
Yeah.
So over the top again. It's grotesque. It's Gron Guignol kind of. It almost goes beyond horror and into something else.
Brain Dead, I always thought was amazing. That lawnmower massacre. And the zombie whose head comes off and gets replaced with a garden gnome. Did anybody ever see a film called Evil Aliens? It was made by the same guy who did some other British horror movies. I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but it's ridiculous. It's set in rural Wales, and it's like Bad Taste but Welsh. So so you've got like a combine harvester.
Rings a bell. Does ring a bell.
It's absolutely bonkers. It's got the woman who was in Razor Blades Smile.
Oh, right.
What's a damn night? One of my mates is going to kill me for this because he's obsessed with this woman. I can't remember her name.
Okay, we've just got time for one more question. This is from Dawn again. So a sort of quickish answer for this one, if you wouldn't mind. What horror book have you read and totally enjoyed, but then been disappointed when you watched the film of the book? That's a tough one, really.
Recently, Lovecraft Country. I really liked the book, didn't like the TV series. And I know some people are the other way around, but yeah, they ruined my favorite chapter. They took out the little eldritch abomination Scylla, and that was the one thing I was really looking forward to seeing. So let me think.
Well, from the sound of it, and I'm prejudging, I'm just going by internet talk, the Pigman's Model and Dreams and the Witch House adaptation, I'm kind of steeling myself to be disappointed for those, which is a shame to go into something with that, but that's social media, I guess. I might be pleasantly surprised, who knows.
Another one for me was another series, and it was that god-awful adaptation of Stephen King's The Mist, not the film, because I thought that was really good.
The series,
the series was, it was terrible.
Couldn't get through it. No. How about you, Jeff? You got any for that? Anything comes to mind?
It was kind of cutting a little bit. The question, if I've read any books recently that were turned into a movie, and I liked them, but I didn't like the movie.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Yeah.
I'm not really having anything that's leaping into my mind right now that falls into that kind of specific situation. Have to brew on that a bit longer, which we don't have time.
Okay, well, I think our time is up.
Yep.
The bell's ringing outside. And that means they're going to be coming in here a moment. So I'm sure you'll understand that I want to sort of get out of here pretty quick because the music started as well now. Yes, definitely time to go. They don't charge much for the room, but they do ask a certain sacrifice. Well, it's been great. Thanks, everyone viewing. I hope you've enjoyed. Oh my God.
I'm going out in disguise.
That's why I hoped I was going to blend in, you see.
I'm in disguise. I'm going to get out.
So big thanks to everyone who's tuned in. Thanks very much to Dawn for those questions. And Jeff, thanks for coming to see us, man. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, cheers, man.
Thank you. This is fun.
All right, so that's it for our live Halloween broadcast. We're back to normal next week. We'll be visiting Innsmouth Library to read another favourite weird fiction story. Hope you can join us for that. And in the meantime, of course, do check out our Patreon site. Sign up as a Patreon, help support the show. And there's lots of goodies. You get lots of things for it. You get to see Tim. We'll send you a personal signed photo of himself in his mask. There you go. How can you resist that? All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Happy Halloween.
See ya.